Welcome to The Homeless Conservative, a show about principled politics for exhausted citizens. I am your host, Blake Fisher, and I'm a political junkie, so that you don't necessarily have to be. Thank you for spending some of your valuable time with me. I want to talk about the media today. Last couple of weeks, we've had, and really before that, there's just been a few stories the last couple of weeks where the media is trying to, I think, do some revisionist history on their coverage of Biden's cognitive decline. And it bothers me for a lot of reasons, because I think it's dishonest. I think that it's trying to lay blame on Democrats and the White House staff around Joe Biden, and not really owning up to the fact that they should have dug a little deeper than they did. And so I want to talk about the press's sort of revisionism on that. And then I want to also talk about how the right is essentially doing the same thing with Donald Trump, because I believe that there are signs of cognitive decline with Donald Trump too, but you're not really hearing anyone talking about them either. And I think that's strange to me. And I also don't think it's going to work, because I think people are smart enough to see with their own eyes and hear with their own ears and make a decision for themselves. But it would be nice if the media, tried to do a little bit of this work that they're supposed to do. Because here's my thing about the media. They've lost all sorts of trust. Ratings are down across the board in a lot of these places. Cable news way down, network news way down, newspapers, readership down. Basically everything's down, especially since November of 2024. I mean, a lot of these people have taken an absolute bath since then. And I think it's pretty obvious, and look at the polls, the trust in media, very, very low now. And I think that they have themselves to blame for it. I don't think they're going to fix it without actually doing a real apology about this and actually owning up to the things that they did that were willful and wrong. And so I want to talk about that first. So basically talking about two things: the Democrats sort of and the media sort of cover up of the Biden thing, and then how the right is sort of doing the same thing with Donald Trump now. And I think that it's pretty obvious that both have missed a step. And it's silly that each side is just going la 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 and pretending with their fingers in their ears that this isn't happening. So this kind of started, I feel like this story got going for a couple of reasons. One, the White House Correspondents' Dinner was a couple weekends ago, and Alex Thompson from Axios got an award, and during his speech, he said this:
is as necessary as ever. President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. But being truth tellers also means telling the truth about ourselves. We, myself included, missed a lot of this story, and some people trust us less because of it. We bear some responsibility for faith in the media being at such lows.
So the first thing I want to attack on that is that there's a real tell in what he says, because what he says, let's just go over that quote again: President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. I find it incredibly telling that a member of the press in front of a room full of the press and the media has to say out loud that, hey, reminder, Democrats lie sometimes too. Just even the phrasing of that. And its cover-up by the people around him is a reminder that every White House, regardless of party, is capable of deception. It's inherent in there that they're saying we trust Democrats normally and not Republicans, and that's on us for trusting the Democrats. That might as well be what he said, because that is what they are saying, right? Because no one ever doubts that the press holds Republicans accountable to these kind of things. But this is basically passing the buck. This is saying that President Biden's decline and its cover-up by the people around him, as if the media wasn't part of that cover-up. And then we can go to Chuck Todd on the same sort of situation, which I like. I like both these guys to some degree. I read and I pay attention to both of them. But I think that this is full-on revisionist. This is Chuck Todd on Pod Save America talking about the same thing and how the media did cover it.
Earlier this month, you were on Chris Cillizza. You were talking to Chris Cillizza, a fellow Substacker and podcast host, but about that, you said that the supposed media cover-up of Biden's decline was a right-wing manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. I think the idea that the media was covering it up is absurd.
Well, that's what I'm upset about. It's the idea that the media is the reason why the public thought he was too old, because the media showed you him shuffling every day, and the media didn't have the interviews with him and would tell you. The media would show you that, hey, he's using the short staircase, right? How is it that Fox even had the clips to show, right? It was the media. So, and now, were there pundits on MSNBC and CNN who essentially tried to shame any member of the press that would bring this up? Yes, that was true. I mean, Joe Scarborough did this, right? He was very aggressive as a defender of Joe Biden whenever it seemed like it was necessary, whenever this would pop up. But this idea that it wasn't an issue, my goodness, Dean Phillips did run for president on this issue. Now, there were certain pundits that
reportedly he did. Yes.
Well, I mean,
yeah. So here's my problem with what Chuck Todd is saying here. He's pretending like, well, that's how you knew about it was because of the media. Obviously, you saw the images of him shuffling. The media's job is not just to point a camera at things and then for us to interpret everything. Part of why we need the media is because every individual in this country cannot do their own homework on all of this stuff. We can't all do freedom of information. We can't do interviews. We don't have access to these people, and the press do. My problem with the way Chuck is framing this is he's pretending like it was all there. What are you talking about? The Republicans are pretending we didn't cover it, and yet they had the footage. How'd they get the footage? Well, first of all, Fox News has their own camera people there. They've got people in the press pool that could take those videos. And my point is that this did not get brought up to the degree that Chuck Todd is pretending it did, because what should have been happening is that we should have had reports of why were reporters not going to the White House and saying, when was the last time Joe Biden had a full cabinet meeting with his cabinet? Because now we've seen all these, there was a there was a Wall Street Journal report that came out right before the election, I believe, and it sort of had all these a lot of off the record, people basically saying, yeah, he didn't recognize me. We served in the Senate together. He didn't recognize me at a party. You started having all these people sort of coming out of the woodwork and saying there were all these problems. I don't believe for a second that wasn't getting to the press before that Wall Street Journal article. Okay. And it was a lack of wanting to dig into those questions. They didn't want to have to ask the questions. So yes, Chuck Todd's right. We saw video of him shuffling. We saw them sort of complaining sometimes about a lack of access and how he hadn't done an interview or taken questions from the press that weren't planned in advance and stuff. But it wasn't to the degree that we would have seen it if it was anyone else. And the reason I can prove that that's true is because I have Google, and you can search on Google before certain dates. So you can search date ranges in the news. And so if I search, for example, there were 3 specific times when the press did lean a little bit more into Biden's age stuff, just a little bit more. So the first time was in 2019 and 2020. When he was not yet the nominee. They were having these problems before COVID hit of him having the vigor to be able to go out there on the campaign trail. And so he really, really, really dodged a bullet there by COVID allowing him to sit in the basement and run a campaign. So we know these problems were happening in 2020. I don't believe for a second that none of that, that never leaked to the press. We get another little sprinkling of it in 2022, 2023, when Joe Biden has not yet declared that he's going to run for a second term, but people are trying to sort of, convince him to maybe not run for another term. And so his favorite Washington Post columnist writes a thing that basically says, it'd be good for his legacy to hang it up. He should pass it off to the next generation. It was in the kindest way possible. It didn't work though. Once he said he's running again, it just shut down. Here's a headline from, I did a Google search for articles about Biden's cognitive decline before June of 2024, because obviously we got a lot more after that. Because the third time that we heard about his age was once he did that disastrous debate performance, and it was obvious that the choice was now he loses to Donald Trump or we get him out and replace him with someone else. So here's what we're talking about. In December 2023, Newsweek, stop talking about Biden's frailty. Talk about Trump's signs of dementia. The media obviously has no trouble talking about Trump's signs of dementia, but they're not willing to talk about it with Biden. And they're pretending this is an access problem. Here's another Newsweek one from January of 2024. Joe Biden appears to be a super ager, doctors say. This is not a doctor, by the way, that examined him. This is just some doctor, right? Or here we've got By the way, and if we just thought, some people thought one of the common things that I heard was, oh, well, it's unfair. You don't know. You're not his doctor. You're not a neurologist. You can't judge. You can't tell me he has dementia from afar. Okay, that's fine. Except that here's Newsweek's article from January 2024. Donald Trump biographer says former president is in cognitive decline. So they don't have a problem doing it with Trump. They don't have a problem speculating about his age or cognitive decline or dementia. But they do have a problem doing that with Joe Biden. Why is mainstream media ignoring Trump's advanced age? This is November of 2023, The Daily Beast. This is Lawrence O'Donnell at MSNBC. Donald Trump's cognitive decline continues in plain view. Okay. Mental acuity questions catch up with Trump. That's from U.S. News and World Report. Psychologists make frightening prediction about Trump's cognitive decline and the personality trait that will, I don't know what the rest of the headline is. Okay. The media had no problem talking about Trump's cognitive decline. The media has no problem talking about his potential dementia. Not a lot of information that I can find on Biden. Most of the headlines that you would find on Biden would be things like, if I actually search for that, let's just actually look through these. So these are articles about Biden cognitive decline before June of 2024. Even after the special counsel alleged that Biden couldn't recall personal details, and he said he was an elderly man with poor memory, the press attacked Robert Hur for that in that report after his documents case. And so most of them are explaining it away as this is, you're making fun of a guy with a stutter. This is he just gaffes. He's not old. He's not tipping. He's not slipping. So there's all these situations where. So like I said, this is me looking up Biden cognitive decline versus Trump cognitive decline, and I find way more articles about Donald Trump's cognitive decline pre that debate in 2024. So I think it's obvious that it isn't just something they missed. It's something they willfully ignored, because we've all seen this before. We all have had elderly grandparents or parents or aunts and uncles and stuff. We've all seen this happen with our own eyes, unfortunately, and we can tell the signs of it. And so the media, for all their attempts to cover this up, and for all the White House's attempts to cover up, it did not work, first of all. Take that as a sigh of relief in the sense that the media is not as powerful as we make them out to be on the right. We can talk about how they're biased and they don't cover the right the same as they cover the left, and that they call every Republican presidential candidate in my lifetime a Nazi and Hitler, and it's the same thing over and over again. We can complain about that, and it's fair to complain about it, but it should be noted that it doesn't work that well. People still saw that Joe Biden was old and did not want him to be the president again, did not think he could be the president again. And that's how the Democrats got themselves in that terrible situation, is that they should have forced him out in 2022 after the midterms, but they didn't. So that's on them. That's their fault. They make that bed, they sleep in it. The problem that I have is that if the media wants to get people's trust back, they need to do an actual, hey, we screwed up, and this is exactly how we screwed up. It wasn't a mistake. It was willful. We thought Donald Trump was a threat, and we were willing to do anything to make sure he didn't get elected again. And you need to own up to that. And you need to say how you're going to not do it going forward, or just own it and say you're going to keep doing that going forward. I'm just a little podcaster. I'm not some big guy. I just don't think it's that crazy to say that I'm going to call out the good and the bad of any elected official, because I think that's what we're supposed to do as citizens. I think they work for us. And I think the media is certainly an important part of that. Look, I'm not the media. I don't have Joe Rogan's more the media than I am as far as actual influence on stuff. But I do think that people that have influence over people should take that responsibility seriously. And to me, I'm not sure Chuck Todd and Alex Thompson or any of these people on the left are really taking it seriously, because if they were really taking it seriously, they would say, here is how I personally screwed up. And it's not that I didn't ask the right questions. It's that I didn't want to ask those questions. That's the truth. I think the media behaved totally badly when it comes to Joe Biden. I think there's no excuse for it. And like I said, go to Google and search for these things like Biden cognitive decline or dementia or too old for second term, whatever you want to search for. And you put the dates in if you want to. And you just see how many news articles come up and see what kind of publications they come from. They were mostly coming from Fox News's and Breitbart's and these sort of right-leaning media stuff. And the reason I think it's worth talking about now, I'm not just talking about the past, is because the right has the potential to do the exact same thing right now with Donald Trump. I think it's pretty obvious from my own eyes and ears that Donald Trump is not the same exact Donald Trump he was 9 years ago. I think if you look back, or 10 years ago, look back to 2015, and we're 5 years out from him announcing he's running for president. Or, I'm sorry, 10 years out from that. And I would expect someone that was, how old is Trump now? Is he 78 now? Going from 68 to 78 is a big 10 years. It's not the same as 20 to 30 or 30 to 40, okay? And I would expect some slowdown. And some of it I wouldn't even be concerned about. Physical stuff doesn't really bother me that much. We don't expect the president to actually have to get in a fist fight with like Putin or something, right? It's not necessary. FDR was in a wheelchair. Like Governor Abbott in Texas is in a wheelchair. I don't think you need to be physically, like the physical things don't bother me. Now, I think you add them all up with Joe Biden, and it was the shuffling, and it was the talking, and it was the not recognizing people, and the not knowing people's names, and there were all sorts of factors that went into that, okay? With Donald Trump, we don't have the physical thing. I think that he seems physically capable. He's not shuffling around. He seems to be able to move correctly. I mean, he likes to talk to the press. However, if you pay attention to what he says, here's how I would frame it. I think Donald Trump has always been about bluster and bullying, and I think he's intellectually insecure. I don't know that necessarily means that he is dumb. I'm not saying he's a stupid person. I think he's dumb about some subjects. I think it's ridiculous to think that anyone's an expert in everything. And my least favorite thing about the MAGA crowd is they pretend that he's all-knowing. He has this great plan, and even when he contradicts what he said the day before, it's part of the plan, and he's almighty and all knowledgeable, and God ordained him, and all this kind of stuff. That gets ridiculous. I mean, I think it's ridiculous for anyone to think that anyone's that smart about everything. You can be smart about commercial real estate if you're him. I mean, he developed real estate. I mean, I get that he's a real estate developer. He probably knows a lot more about it than I do. I don't think that means that means you understand how tariffs work, or how manufacturing works, or global supply chains, or foreign policy, or whatever these kind of situations, which is why presidents then hire people. But if you listen to him talk and you note the things, especially if you, I mean, I don't suggest doing it, but if you follow him on like Truth Social and pay attention to the things he talks about and the sort of rants he gets on, it sounds like your crazy uncle on Facebook. It sounds like a gullible old person, like a gullible boomer. And I'm not using like boomer. I'm not one of these people that loves to do the intergenerational crap talk. But it does sound like an old boomer on Facebook. He falls for everything. He believes everything that's put in front of him, unless it's negative about him, and then it's fake news. And I think what you've got to ask yourself is, we're going to play some clips in a second. Do these sound like, would you trust this person to be the president of the United States just based on the talking here? Okay. So first of all, let's talk about this past weekend. Donald Trump has floated all sorts of crazy ideas in these first 100 days. And I don't generally talk about them because I think they're distractions. And I think for the most part, they're purposeful distractions. There's a Steve Bannon sort of playbook in all of this, that you kind of flood the zone with just everything so that there's an overwhelm of information, and you can actually be getting stuff done while everyone's talking about the sort of culture war outrage thing of the day. And Trump is pretty good about this stuff. So there was, we're going to take over Gaza and they're going to turn it into a resort. So Mar Gaza kind of thing. That was a thing for a week. And then whatever. There's been so many of these things I can't keep track of them. I don't talk about them much because I go, it's never going to happen, so it's not worth talking about. It's not worth wasting my breath. It's not worth wasting your time hearing about it. However, I think it's worth looking at some of the patterns. And one of the patterns is that he keeps floating these ideas, and I think it's very obvious that he's doing so without having consulted with anyone around him, because there's no game plan, there's no like official White House thing, there's no this person's in charge of it. It's just sort of a decree he puts out on Truth Social, and then expects the people around him to do his bidding and do the thing that he says. So this past weekend, the two things that I would normally not talk about is he wants to reopen Alcatraz, because we need a place for federal prisoners, apparently. And he wants to tariff movies not made in America. we could get into all the details of why both of these are crazy ideas, but it doesn't really matter why they're crazy ideas. I mean, let's just do the short version. Alcatraz has been closed for a long time because it's not financially plausible to have a place that only holds like 300 prisoners on an island without water or food access. You got to ship in everything, and the building's totally deteriorated. It's now a tourist attraction. We have a supermax prison in Colorado that's not full, that we can keep sending violent people. I'm not against sending violent criminals. It's a crazy idea. Who knows where he came up with, but he's like, let's do this thing. And then movies, same thing. Okay, tariffs on movies. How would that work? What is the physical tariffs are things that we do on imports. Okay, so what is the thing we're there's not a physical product there. Most people aren't buying DVDs anymore. So are we saying that if you shoot 10% of the film, we're taking the budget of that and tariff it? Like, there's no way to make sense of it. But it just becomes these sort of rants of things that he likes to talk about. And then inevitably what happens is he does this over the weekend and the next day or at night. And then the next day the press asks him about it and he sort of goes on these rants about stuff. Okay, this is Trump on Alcatraz.
How did you come up with the idea?
Well, I guess I was supposed to be a movie maker. We started with the movie making and we'll end. I mean, it represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate, right? Alcatraz, Sing Sing and Alcatraz, the movies. But it's right now a museum, believe it or not. A lot of people go there. It housed the most violent criminals in the world, and nobody ever escaped. One person almost got there, but they, as you know the story, they found his clothing rather badly ripped up. And it was a lot of shark bites, a lot of problems. Nobody's ever escaped from Alcatraz, and just represented something strong having to do with law and order. We need law and order in this country, and so we're going to look at it. Some of the people up here are going to be working very hard on that, and we had a little conversation. I think it's going to be very interesting. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think it represents something. Right now it's a big hulk that's sitting there rusting and rotting. You look at it, it's sort of, you saw that picture that was put out, it's sort of amazing. But it sort of represents something that's both horrible and beautiful and strong and miserable, weak. It's got a lot of qualities that are interesting. And I think that
I'm just saying, if you had dinner with that person, that was just like an old guy that you knew, would you trust him to watch your kids or do your finances or like tax? I mean, like, would you trust this guy to be your plumber? I don't think so. Like, I really, like, really, if you just like step back and this was not the president of the United States, he's just rambling. But then it's beautiful, it's horrible, it's strong, it's weak. And again, there's like, he doesn't really give the explanation why Alcatraz. Like, is there a reason that we can't send these people to the Supermax federal facility that we have in Colorado? That's just one example. Here's another one. This is him with the ABC interview that happened a couple weekends ago. And he's specifically talking about a situation where the Kilmar Abrego Garcia, which is the guy that the illegal immigrant that he deported to El Salvador, even though there was a court order that he could not be deported to El Salvador. So there's this big story now about, can they get him back and blah, blah, blah. Without getting into the details of that, he holds up a picture at one point on Truth Social and X and stuff, and talks about how this guy was a gang member. Here's the proof. Here's him with these knuckle tattoos, and they say MS-13 on him. The problem is Donald Trump believes that the picture, that he actually has the tattoo MS-13, but really what he has is like marijuana, skull, something else, and someone had superimposed with Photoshop or some other editing app the letters MS-13 as if to say those tattoos represent the letters MS and 13. This is how they're showing that he's MS-13. So to be clear, the letters MS and numbers 13 are not on the guy's knuckles. It's these other tattoos of other symbols, okay? Donald Trump does not understand that. He thinks that the actual letters MS and 13 are on the guy's knuckles. Here's the interview on ABC.
when we have criminals, murderers, criminals in this country, we have to get them out, and we're doing it.
By law.
And you'll pick out one man, but even the man that you picked out, he said he wasn't a member of a gang. And then they looked, and on his knuckles, he had MS-13.
There's a dispute
Well,
over that.
wait a minute. He had MS-13 on his knuckles tattooed.
Oh, he had some tattoos that are interpreted that way. But let's move on.
Wait a minute. Hey, Terry.
He did not have the
Don't do that.
letter MS-13.
It says MS-13.
That was Photoshop. So let me
That
just...
was Photoshop, Terry. You can't do that. Hey, they're giving you the big break of a lifetime. You know, you're doing the interview. I picked you because, frankly, I never heard of you, but that's okay. But I picked you, Terry, but you're not being very nice. He had MS-13 tattooed.
We'll agree to disagree. I want to move on to something else.
Terry, do you want me to show you the picture?
I saw the picture. We'll
and you think
agree
it
to
was
disagree.
Photoshop? Well,
Here we go.
Don't Photoshop it. Go look at his hand. He had MS-13.
He did have tattoos that can be interpreted that way. I'm not an expert on them. I want to turn to Ukraine, sir.
Terry,
I want to get to Ukraine.
No. He had MS as clear as you can be, not interpreted. This is why people no longer believe the news, because
when
it's
he was
fake
photographed
news.
in El Salvador, they aren't there. But let's just go on. They aren't there when he's in El Salvador.
They weren't there, but they're there now, right?
No,
but they're
in
now.
your picture.
Terry.
Ukraine, sir.
He's got MS-13 on his knuckles.
All right.
Okay?
We'll take a look at that.
You do such a disservice.
We'll take a look at
Why
that,
don't you
sir.
just say, yes, he does, and, go on to something else?
It's contested. Ukraine.
Coming.
Okay, I mean, again, there are only three this is the reason I picked this one specifically. It's not that it actually matters. This is a situation where there are only three options. One, he's lying, which I don't think he is here. I think he's actually telling the truth. I think he believes that says MS-13. The second option is that he's incredibly gullible and or stupid because he doesn't understand that that is superimposed on the image. Because again, this is very simply like we could show him the other image. There's all, and really the interviewer did a terrible job here because I just would have been like, let's get the picture right now and let's show it to you. Here's the actual picture. This is the Photoshop version. It doesn't say MS-13. It has a marijuana leaf. It has a skull. It says all these other things. Okay. Option 2, he's gullible and or stupid. And then option 3 is obviously he has mentally declined enough that this is something that he believes now, but maybe wouldn't have before. People are trying to convince him over and over again that other countries don't pay tariffs. He still just absolutely just cannot believe that. He also doesn't understand that with manufacturing jobs, that maybe people don't want the manufacturing jobs he's trying to bring back because we have 500,000 available manufacturing jobs that have not been filled for over a year now. And he doesn't understand. He goes, no, I don't believe that. I mean, I just don't believe that they don't want those jobs. They want those jobs. And, people try to show him the numbers and say, well, I mean, there's 500,000 available manufacturing jobs. Why are Americans not taking them? And it tried to show them the data that, hey, people are moving out of manufacturing. They want to move into services. They're higher paying jobs. They're better jobs. They're for lots of reasons. And he just doesn't believe it. So, is that cognitive decline? I don't know. It might be. And my point is, these are questions that should be being asked. I think it's someone, and I know this seems like not a big deal. I want someone in the media to not just do what he does and roll over and say, agree to disagree. That was the worst freaking possible way ABC or this Terry guy could have handled that. Agree to disagree? No, it's either it's Photoshopped or it's not Photoshopped. There is we can disagree about if those mean MS-13 or not. That's fine. Let's have that discussion. Let's argue about it. Do they not? Whatever. But it was Photoshopped. And that needs to be made clear to the president of the United States because this is a stupid thing that doesn't really matter. I mean, it does matter. Due process matters and stuff. It's one guy. What happens when this is intelligence that's brought to him about, a potential strike or our enemies or Russia in Ukraine or Israel in Gaza or China invading Taiwan or if it's whatever it is? What happens when it's more important information? He's got to make a decision on it and he can't comprehend what's going on. Because like I said, there are only three options. He's either lying about it or he's stupid or he's losing his mind and he's a little crazy. And I lean towards it's a combination of the other two. I mean, it's either that he's so stupid he doesn't understand that things can be photoshopped or it's that he's a lunatic and he believes that because that is the confirmation he wanted, this guy is a bad guy. Show me he's a bad guy. Someone shows me a picture with him with MS-13 on his knuckles. I now therefore put that away. This is exactly like your old uncle that's on Facebook that passes around the chain thing that's like, well, I've got to repost this or else I lose access to Facebook for free because Mark Zuckerberg sent me this personal message and so I'm reposting this. Or they're the people that comment on Babylon Bee or Onion articles and don't realize they're satire. Like, the gullible believes every conspiracy theory. I sat next to, oh my gosh, I was at a Thanksgiving thing. Was it Thanksgiving? No, I don't know what it was. It was like a dinner thing. And with sort of family of family of family. So not actually related to these people. And I got stuck next to the guy that was full on everything's a conspiracy theory. And this sounds this sounds just like that guy. And I don't know if that means that, like, again, is this foolishness? Is it cognitive decline? I don't know, but I think someone should ask the question of, like, how did Trump come to believe that those were actually on there? Did someone tell him that wasn't Photoshop? Did he just assume that himself? Is this how the president does his quote unquote research? Is just confirmation bias? RFK Jr. is doing the same thing in Health and Human Services right now. It concerns me. And I think the right will do itself no help by covering up for this kind of stuff too, because that's the kind of thing that we should be able to go, it doesn't matter which side of the aisle you're on, doesn't matter what your even position is on deporting the guy. We should be able to agree on the actual facts, but we can't get the president of the United States to understand that is superimposed on the image. It bothers me. Then this is Donald Trump on and then this is Trump on NBC this weekend on Meet the Press, and he's talking about, again, the stolen election stuff, and he can't get off of it. Here we go again.
Even though we had to go through the COVID thing, that horrible situation with COVID, we did numbers, and when I handed it over, the election was rigged, and because of that, we have a lot of problems, by the way. But when I handed it over, what happened? The market was higher than it was previous to COVID coming in. Yeah. Nobody could believe it. The stock market I'm talking about.
I don't want to look back, but you did take your case to court about that.
Back.
You took your case to court about your allegations against the election. Let me ask you,
There's no question about it. The election was rigged. The facts are in, and it's still being litigated. Let's go.
You did take your case to court more than 60 times and didn't win those cases.
I won a lot of court cases.
Just to button that up, though, sir. Just to button that up.
What are you talking about?
How
the election
worried are you?
Are we talking about the election
Let's talk about here and now. Let's talk about
the
here and now.
election of 2020?
Let's talk about here and now. Are you worried about a recession?
No.
Okay.
It's like a toddler trying to get him on point. And I get that the reporters have a certain amount of time and they're trying to get their questions in and they want to talk about these things that are going on right now and not relitigate the past. To me, I don't think this is lying anymore. Maybe it started as a lie. I think he genuinely believes the election was stolen in 2020, of which there's no evidence. He's not won court cases. He has lost all those court cases. There is no evidence that the election was stolen or rigged in 2020. There's just none. There is not any. And he's not shown any. No one on that side has. All of their evidence can be debunked. And yet he truly believes this. So again, is that stupidity? Is it lying or is it cognitive decline? I think it's one of those three things. I think you either have to be crazy, losing your mind, you have to be lying, or you are a fool. And again, I don't think he's lying based on how often he brings it up. She didn't even ask about 2020. He brought it up and he wouldn't drop it. And she's trying to get him off the topic and he keeps going back to it. And this concerns me. And like I said, there's something like this every day. And I don't love to talk about this stuff. I feel it's worth doing one episode on, or maybe I'll do it as I notice more things. But I'm not in the position to be able to interview Donald Trump. I'm not in a position to talk to the people that are around him. But some of the media is, and a lot of the media on the right certainly is. And a lot of these new media types on YouTube and podcasts are getting access to the White House briefing room, and they're just doing the sycophant thing. They're doing the full-on, I'll let you tell me what to ask you kind of thing that the left did with Biden, but they tried to cover it up a little bit better. They tried to hide behind and pretend they were being real journalists and stuff. This is just, it's going to absolutely crush people's trust in the media, and no one will have anyone to turn to. And so my concern is that at some point, I believe we will run into a situation with Donald Trump where it's going to be like a debate type kind of thing that we did with Joe Biden. I think it's inevitable. I don't see how we get through the next 3.5 years almost 4 years. I guess we're only 100 days in, so whatever 4 years minus 100 days is. Because this is concerning to me, and what I would like to see more of is, it doesn't even seem like the media, the legacy media, the left version of the media, is really even willing to ask these kind of questions, because there's an access problem. Donald Trump will absolutely just like lose your access and you won't be able to cover this kind of stuff anymore. He did that with AP because they wouldn't call it the Gulf of America. And so I get that there's the access part, but I think there's also they're worried about the hypocrisy of asking these questions about Donald Trump immediately when they didn't ask them about Joe Biden, and they're trying to pretend that they missed the story. And I don't know if all these stories of the media coming out and saying, I don't think it's coordinated, but I certainly do think it's a sort of permission structure for them to say, well, we learned from our mistake of Joe Biden, and so we're not going to make that same mistake. We're going to ask the tough questions this time. But in both of those interviews I just played, it was kind of obvious that they wanted to move on, and they didn't want to even talk about the fact that Donald Trump doesn't understand that doesn't say MS-13 on his knuckles, or that he truly believes that the 2020 election was stolen, and there's no evidence that happened, even though now 80% of Republicans believe it too, because he's just said it over and over again. And so we're idiots. I don't believe this, obviously, but we as a whole, the Republican Party, which I'm still part of for some dumb reason, we believe it now, and people believe there's something untoward about the 2020 election. I think this will come to a head. I mean, this is my prediction. At some point during his administration, there will be a sort of, we can't deny that there's a problem here, because he loves to get in front of the camera. That's the difference, is that Joe Biden was hiding, and he had this team around him that was working very hard to make sure that no one had access to him to see this decline. And I believe that was the case with a lot of people. But what my problem with the press in the Biden situation was, as senators were getting locked out, as cabinet members were sort of getting, we weren't having cabinet meetings. There were cabinet members that hadn't met with him one-on-one in a long time. It was all his people and their people, and Biden wasn't around. At some point, those people should have been asking questions. At some point, one of those people should have been going to the press and saying, hey, I'm concerned because I'm in the cabinet and I've not met with Joe Biden in 6 months. I think that, again, the press should have asked those questions. Why is this not happening? The opposite's happening with Trump. Trump is willing to get in front of an interview. He gives lots of them. He does press conferences all the time, which does, fortunately, give us the ability to just see this with our own eyes. And maybe we'll just believe it better with our own eyes. But I still think we need to know what's going on behind the scenes. I think that that's still the media's job. I still think it's worth reporting on this kind of stuff. And again, it's not that I think these distractions are worth talking about all the time, because I do think that there is a strategy there. I think that the reason he's selling Trump 2028 hats and talking about it seriously, it was like a joke, and now it's like, no, I think I could do it. Our lawyers are looking at it. I think he does know that there's a performance side thing. It gets him attention. It gets him the right kind of attention, where the left is freaking out and talking about it's unconstitutional for him to run again, and the right gets to kind of troll them, and everyone's happy in the media because they all get clicks and eyeballs on the stories for a story that doesn't actually matter. I mean, obviously, it would be a big deal if he actually chose to run, but I'm going to wait and see that he actually tries to do it, and then I'll make the argument that it's unconstitutional, okay? Because it is. It's a slam dunk. Just like opening Alcatraz is a stupid idea, or tariffing movies. Oh, by the way, one more thing about tariffing movies, just as a caveat. The whole reason we have this whole trade war going on right now is because Donald Trump believes that trade is bad, and specifically that trade deficits with other countries are bad. We do not have a trade deficit in the movie industry. I think there's a $15 billion surplus on the American side of Hollywood. We export our movies all over the world. We do not import a lot of movies. That's the reason you've never heard of the foreign films that are up for nominees at the Academy Awards. You never heard of them because they're not playing in theaters here. But guess what? The Mission Impossible movie will be in theaters around the world, okay? So his whole point of tariffs doesn't even matter. This is nostalgia. That's all this is. In the Dispatch, Nick Cottegio writes, I sense that Trump views his job as fixing the culture, and 9 out of 10 times that fix calls for doing things the way America used to do them, or at least the way his nostalgia-drenched memory recalls America doing them. A laundry list of old boomer crap is how one Twitter pal described the impetus behind his policy choices lately. Romanticizing lost factory jobs, complaining about foreign films, and kids having too many toys, reminiscing about the military glories of yesteryear. His cultural nostalgia is informed by two core beliefs: that the country was better when it was tougher, and that it's been weakened by foreign influences of every variety. Immigrants, trade, entertainment from abroad, it's all poisoning the blood. And I think that's a pretty good theory on where every single action that's coming from Donald Trump is. We want to go back to having Alcatraz open. We want to have movies made in LA. It's all looking back. I mean, his entire slogan of Make America Great Again. I actually think I don't buy into the left's whole description that that's clearly a racist dog whistle, that like, when was America great? Because it was worse for black people at every point before now. I don't buy that that's really what the idea behind Make America Great Again. I think what they were trying to say is, like, in general, like, we used to feel proud about this country and these things, and we're not on those tracks anymore. And I don't think that it was ever a slogan pointing to a specific point in time. I don't think it was that, although he's claiming it was the 1800s now because of the late 1800s because of tariffs under McKinley. People have claimed, obviously, the 50s are the thing that people are nostalgic for. The joke is that I think Democrats want to work there and Republicans want to live there. But we have these rosy views in nostalgia. And I think that gets worse as you get older. Right? It certainly does for me. And I'm only 41 right now. So I can imagine when I'm double my age, it might be even worse. And I might have even a more rosy view of what it was like as that time slips away. But we've got a problem here. And I think this is a problem across all of our elected politicians. There are certainly people that are claiming that is the only problem. And I want to be clear. I don't think there's a specific number where we have to say, like, these people can't run for office anymore. But I do think we have to, as Americans, look at this and go, we don't have a good solution. If Donald Trump, look, we didn't have a good solution for Biden. And we're really pretty fortunate that it didn't turn out worse than it did. And the truth is, we don't have a good mechanism. The 25th Amendment is meant for someone truly being incapacitated. And it wasn't even implored during Woodrow Wilson when he suffered a stroke and his wife was basically running the White House. That should be that's a constitutional crisis. His wife was not elected. People theorize that some of that was going on under Biden, that was he really the person in charge? Was the auto pen signing things that he hadn't actually approved? I haven't seen the evidence that that's actually happened. I haven't heard the reports. I'm sure we are going to learn more and more and more about the Biden administration as people write their books and cash in. But we don't have a good mechanism for when we elect someone that's not of sound mind, how to get them out of there. The 25th Amendment, if it did not get invoked after January 6th with Donald Trump, and if it didn't get invoked after Joe Biden's disastrous debate performance, I think Kamala Harris should have rounded up the cabinet and said, we're voting on this. And I think it's basically you vote to get rid of him. And if you can't get enough people to get rid of him, those people quit. I mean, if he was too old and too cognitively declined to run for president, why can he be the president? I think that was a fair question to ask. And I don't think he should have. I think after the June debate, he should have resigned. I think Kamala Harris should have been the president because I don't trust that he could make a decision. I don't trust that he could take in the right information. I don't trust that he could, like I said, you go back to Afghanistan, and specifically with Joe Biden, his generals told him, hey, we should not go with this plan. It's going to go badly. And they're on record having said that. He is on record saying they didn't tell him that. That either means he's lying or he had made up his mind and was not paying attention to any of the information that was different than how he had made up his mind. The latter is worse than the former. If he's just a liar, I expect politicians to lie. If he really doesn't remember that the generals told him this was a bad idea and advised him against it, that's a bigger problem. It's the same with Donald Trump. We are potentially going to be in a situation where there's going to be a decision he has to make that is going to actually affect our military members' lives. It's going to affect our lives. He's already doing this. I mean, he's affecting our lives every day with this tariff nonsense that I don't believe he has the power to do. And right now it's like it doesn't have this 9/11 or Pearl Harbor level of, oh my gosh, here's this thing he did, and here's this disaster that we can see all happen all at once. I'm worried that we do not have a mechanism to, if Donald Trump proves to be crazy or cognitively declined, how could you possibly get rid of him? We know that none of the people around him would do that. And so what would happen? I mean, and I think that realistically, with both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we are in a situation where it would be no different than Woodrow Wilson's wife running the White House. I truly believe that. I think that it would be harder to keep a lid on, but the fact that the media just turned a blind eye to it when Biden did it, and now the media on the right will do the same thing if it happened to Donald Trump, I'm not convinced that the cabinet will do their job, because the 25th Amendment is a little hazy about that. Incapacitated. It's like, what does that mean? And so I don't think we're going to get a constitutional amendment, but we got to think about these things. Like this could be a real problem. And I think we're being distracted by all the little things. And this is a big problem that now we've had 2 presidents in a row that are either fabulous liars about a lot of stuff, or they're fools enough to believe the things that they're saying, or they've slipped and they actually have cognitive decline that's causing them to believe the things that they believe. And I just think that those latter 2 options are not great. That's not good for any of us. This is not a team sport, okay? That is it for me. Thank you for joining me. If you can do one thing for me, rate the podcast wherever you listen. That helps me a bunch. I'm also doing some shorter videos, 10, 20 minutes long on YouTube if you want to follow over there at The Homeless Conservative. That is it for me. I will catch you next week.